The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all First Peoples of this land, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor the treaty, the inherent rights of the people, and the land. All right, we will begin with the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
Good evening, Chair. There are no additions to the agenda.
Thank you. Any discussions before the adoption of the agenda? All right, would someone like to move the adoption of the agenda? Mayor?
Chair, I move that meeting be adopted as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will call for the vote. Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, and that passes unanimously. All right, then we have the adoption of the minutes from the November 21st Committee of the Whole. Is there any discussion? No. Would somebody like to move the adoption of the minutes? There you are. Is it on?
Thank you.
Councillor Penrod?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to move that the November 21st, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes be adopted as presented.
Thank you. And we will move to the vote. Councillor Barnhart, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. And that passes unanimously. And now into our presentation. There we go. All right, we are moving into our presentations. And first up, we have our digital master plan update. And we have Tab and Jennifer with us to give us the update. Your mic should be on.
Thank you. Good evening. We're just waiting for the PowerPoint. That's me right there. Perfect. Good evening, committee chair, committee members, and the public. My name is Tab Grady, and I am the manager of IT for the city. Administration is here tonight to speak to the digital master plan and provide an update on the city's progress on the screens. I would like the opportunity to reacquaint you with our digital master plan. It is not just about technology. It is about the people and the programs and services that connect us all. Through engagement with stakeholders and community, we have identified transformative initiatives that will further the growth and strengthen the potential of our city for years to come. We are focused on investing resources in specific purposeful steps that enable early adoption, measurement, refinement, and growth of our initiatives. As a recap, City of Beaumont has divided the DMP, or Digital Master Plan, into 6 specific work streams: digital governance, data-driven decision-making, external open data, technology infrastructure, digital experience and partnerships, and lastly, continuous improvement and innovation. The DMP details related to each work stream, its current status, and updates of each activity can be found at dmp.beaumont.ab.ca. What you see here is the overall status of the work applied towards each work stream since 2022. The section in green defines the work completed, blue is progress or in progress, and gray is to be started. This is hard to read, but this is the City of Beaumont's most current version of the DMP roadmap. Each section is a work stream and its associated activities. To date, we have completed all the activities on the screen marked in green. The security and privacy plan, the data training curriculum, broadband and connectivity, application lifecycle management, technology vendor management, and a disaster recovery plan. The activities now marked in blue are currently in progress. This includes the foundational corporate and council policies, the records and information management plan, the data inventory, the internal portal, and the website and service portal. In 2024, the City of Beaumont will commence the activities now marked in gray. Risk management framework, the technology investment framework, performance metrics and reporting, developing, supporting working and steering committees, resilient technology infrastructure plan, and technology and innovation training. Now breaking down these activities and associated items further, I will start to define the progress on each work stream. Starting with digital governance work stream. In 2022, with the support of the whole corporate and analytics team, and by joining a municipal cybersecurity project designed by the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, we defined a current state analysis and roadmap that highlighted areas that we are exposed. A major risk for the City of Beaumont was the lack of any incident response plan for cyber attacks. As a result, we developed a cybersecurity incident response plan over the last year. This plan will guide the city through any cybersecurity incident response process. It starts with the detection and moves through all the phases: analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, and post-incident closure. At the end of 2023, we ran a drill using a malware incident to test our response and plan to run through all the remaining cyber attack scenarios by the end of the first quarter. The city started its record information management project in 2023. This project includes 4 main deliverables that will help address the goals identified as part of the digital governance work stream of the DMP. The 4 deliverables for Records Information Project are as follows. Number 1 is the current state assessment and action plan. For example, a review of the city's entire information management framework, bylaws, policies, and procedures with the goal of identifying any existing gaps. Number 2 was to develop records retention and disposition schedule. This will be a modern, simplified approach to retention and disposition for all city records. 3 is to develop data sensitivity classifications and protection documentation plan. This will enable for the proactive information disclosure. And lastly, to develop an RIM or Records Information Management governance framework. This framework will delineate RIM roles and responsibilities across the organization and include an implementation and training plan. In our technology workstream now is the broadband 1 gig project. You will have noticed that construction around the city has been going on the last year or so. The vendor has completed the infrastructure throughout the city. The only crews left are undertaking repairs, performing maintenance, or working to install fiber in the new development areas. Also in the technology infrastructure workstream, significant progress has been made in establishing a stable and future-proof network with more reliable connectivity. Since 2022, the only internet source we had was via City Hall. All sites connected to this internet at City Hall via an outdoor Wi-Fi panels on the roof of the fire hall. as a hub to City Hall internet, often impacted by weather, equipment failures, and unpredictability. This configuration it took down the whole city of Beaumont infrastructure with the exception of BSRC, who had its own internet for itself at that time. Over the course of 2022-2023, we implemented internet connectivity to each site individually, connecting through a secure VPN to each other. So now if there is an outage at a site, it will be the only one impacted. The caveat here, though, is City Hall. Until we proceed with our SharePoint migration, if this site goes down, we temporarily lose access to files stored on a file server located on site. Continuing with the technology infrastructure workstream, prior to the digital master plan, the City of Beaumont had no documented recovery for the IT infrastructure in the case of a disaster. With the hard work of our corporate analytics and technology team and support from our managed service provider, we now have a documented plan to streamline the process of recovery after a disaster occurs so the city can resume work. These disasters can include, but not limited to, fire, weather, power outages, or cyber attacks. Processes have been in place to ensure that this plan is updated and audited every year for accuracy. The final item in the technology infrastructure workstream is the technology vendor management framework. This activity is currently in progress, but will be wrapped up by the end of Q1 this year. With the support of procurement, vendor management initiative tools and templates have been devised to control and manage the relationship we have with all of our technology vendors. Moving on to the digital experience and partnership work stream, we have a couple items in progress. The internal portal becomes more and more relevant as we migrate data, solutions, and processes over to the M365 ecosystem. This is a place that staff can find events, city employee information, IT support, and a growing number of digital forms and services. The website and service portal project is in progress and has picked up momentum with the selection of a vendor and kicking off meetings. Internal discovery meetings have commenced and public engagement has been scheduled for the week of January 18th, with the anticipated launch of a new website July 2024. As part of the data-driven decision-making workstream, the Corporate Analytics and Technology Department hosted multiple well-attended staff training sessions on what is data. This curriculum has been added for all new staff starting 2024 and beyond, occurring biannually. This supports the DMP initiative of educating staff and speaking the same language around the subject so data-driven decision-making can be part of the City of Beaumont culture. For the data inventory activity, the city is making great progress. To date, 2 things were identified. 1, the type of data, and 2, where our data is stored. For each piece of data, the Corporate Analytics and Technology Department also tracked the department it's tied to and who added it to the inventory. Phase 2 and 3 have kicked off this January and includes the activities of classifying data into different levels, creating directives on how we collect, use, and store data, cleaning up of data, and executing a cybersecurity check on our data. In the continuous improvement workstream, work will commence between 2024 and 2025. This includes technology and innovation training, business area innovation initiatives, and emerging technologies. Also in the external open data workstream, work will commence in 2025. This includes developing an internal advisory group, open data training curriculum, portal and toolkit, and devising an external advisory group and partnerships. And that's the conclusion of our DMP update. I am open to questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. This has obviously been quite the undertaking and will continue to be as we move through the years. I know once we get some of this stuff in place, more specifically the websites, our residents will be able to see a huge shift in usability and ease of navigation and searchability and all that stuff. Great to note that the site, that every site now also has their own connectivity to reduce shortages. That's big, and very happy to hear that we have a cybersecurity incident response plan, as unfortunately these are becoming all too common. So good to have that. I will turn it over to my colleagues for questions, if anybody has any, and Councillor Barnhart, if you have any, please let me know. No questions yet? Okay, well, I have a couple. So I will go ahead. The website to be completed by Q3. Obviously, for many of us, it cannot come soon enough. Will we be able to see it prior to launch?
The intent is to actually present an update on February 20th at the Committee of the Whole with that information. So as far as seeing it, it's part of the discovery process. Yes.
Perfect, thank you. And the vendor management framework, can you speak a bit more to that and as to how this benefits the city?
What it does is it allows us to actually have proper diligence and due diligence on what criteria a vendor can and will bring to the city, be compliant to what we require, especially in the technology realm, as far as what cybersecurity components they have within their framework. It allows us, when we do our procurement process, we actually have ratings that we leverage now as a standard within those IT projects. So we actually standardize those. The other thing it allows us to do, especially in the procurement when it comes to specialty, there's not a lot of vendors out there that have criteria that meet our new standards, especially with the different kinds of credentials required. So it allows us some pre-screening. It allows us that oversight with the vendor management, especially with the technology.
Perfect, thank you. And I think with the new procurement position as well, this will fit in nicely and they'll be able to see a lot of savings through that. I appreciate that explanation. Thank you. I noticed Councillor Barnhart has some questions, so I will turn it over to her.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the presenters. I can't see them, but I know they're there and I heard them. Well done. My question's about the budget, and in the report, it just speaks to the funding for these work stream activities will be included in the budget as required. I'm just wondering if they could speak a little more to that in terms of the scope and size of the budget for this initiative, and will that come back to council for approval on a case-by-case basis, or how, just a little more detail on how that actually would play out. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Jennifer. Councillor Barnhart, what it is by case by case. For example, the website budget request was part of the Service Experience Office. As far as the technology, it's part of the renewal program, the technology renewal program that council had approved over the last 2 years. So we actually bring forward each year what we can accomplish and align with the DMP. So they will be a case by case. And if we require funding for a specific project, for example, if we're going to open data, that will be part of a change request that we would issue that year, where we require extra funding if we can't manage it within our operating budget. Does that help?
It does. That's what I was anticipating. And is there any way that you could tell us at this point how much we have spent? It just ballpark?
Right now in the capital side, we've been over the last 5 years, I'd say about over $500,000 on the capital projects. On the operating projects, I'm going to guess without, and I can come back to it, but we're about 275,000 with including what the website will deliver this year.
And you're talking 2024 when you say that?
Yeah, from 2022 to 2024. Yeah.
Oh, okay, in total. Okay, thank you for that update. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. Does anyone else have any questions for our presenters today? Seeing none, there you go. You guys are all done. Thank you so much. All right, we will move on to our next highly anticipated presentation. They're both highly anticipated.
Just while they're getting set up, I want to piggyback off a comment you just made about two very valuable presentations. As you're going to see, and you just saw in the digital master plan, where they're doing some incredible work that's going to bring us to where we need to be on the digital side. And what you're about to hear on this market analysis is the most current data that we have that will drive our economic development efforts. So I'm very excited. And I said that last week. I couldn't wait for tonight's presentation. So fasten your seatbelts.
Yes, they are very exciting presentations and very relevant to the work that the city does here. So thank you. Good. Good. Okay, I'd like to welcome Jennifer and Devin to the table here. As you know, I'm going to use the mayor's terms and say the microphone is very directional. You need to speak right into it. So please do so. And you can start with our economic development update. One sec, it's not turning on.
Better? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. We are very excited to be here today. It's been a while since we've had the opportunity to bring an update. My hope for this evening is I'm going to do a very brief overview of a couple of things from 2023 that I believe are worth noting, a little bit of look at what we're looking for 2024. About this time last year, we came to council and we talked about how we were going to have a foundation building year last year, and we really did achieve that. I'm very excited about that. It also leaves us in a position where 2024 becomes our boots on the ground year. This is where we get to take all the great information we found, bring it out there and start bringing things back to Beaumont. So I'll quickly go over a couple of things for 2023. As always with my presentations, please let me know if you have a question while we're in the moment. We're covering a lot of things today. It's easier to deal with it as we go. So, okay. Quick review from 2023 is we had a large focus on local business engagement and retention. Some of these engagements happened with council at our side. We do thank you for that. We had a couple of big retentions for the city this year that we're very proud of, and we really started to build that relationship with our local businesses. So we need the businesses in Beaumont to know that we're here to help them grow, to thrive, and that we're here to help in any way that we can. And I really believe we've made great strides towards working towards that. We do have a manager of local business and retention, and he has been busy going door to door with multiple follow-ups, as well as dealing with business licensing, as you'll see on there. Regional partnerships is also something we decided to give a real commitment to. So we've managed as a team to attend over 95% of the regional economic development meetings this year. It's given us a great opportunity to see not only what's coming to the region, but where we stand when it comes to comparing to our neighbors. We've had the opportunity to reply to 9 RFIs, which are requests for information for foreign direct investment. We unfortunately weren't successful on any of them, but again, the more we do these things, the more we learn. And it's great to see where Beaumont does stand against the neighboring communities, I guess you would say. We have industry targeting. So this is something that we've talked about for a long time, is what should Beaumont be when it grows up? What do we want to be chasing? Where do we have that strategic advantage? I'm going to not go too much into that because that's going to be the bulk of our presentation this evening, but we did manage to complete that commercial market analysis. Business licensing, as I mentioned, that continues, and it was migrated to an online portal. A few bumps along the way, but we've built some great relationships with businesses as we help them navigate that. So we kind of made some lemonade out of that one there for ourselves. We did create a generic Beaumont brochure mid-year last year that we started using to promote the community. As of about, 4 o'clock today, we finished a commercial one that will be going to Whistler next year, and you'll see more of those coming through the year, sector-specific packages. Really what we want to do is target what's great about Beaumont for exactly what people are building. So We'll be doing those all in-house, which gives us the opportunity to keep them as living documents and adjust them as industry trends change, as we have things advance in Beaumont that may better our position. So we're very excited about having that available. We've also worked with local developers a good deal on the existing commercial properties as well as what is the potential. So a great example of this is we do have our manager of investment attraction going to Whistler next week. We do not have our local developers going. So what we're doing is we're taking all of their information for them. And we're doing what we can to help them fill those CRUs, fill those vacant units, and just start bringing more variety to the people living in Beaumont. Finally, we have the continuation of the major initiatives. So broadband, that was a very exciting thing for everyone in the city, and we will continue to leverage that work. Innovation Park plugs along at a rate that we can't control, but we work with. And regional partner engagement. So we've had some headway in working with our Indigenous neighbors as well as our neighboring communities on what could be potential projects that benefit us all. Any questions on 23 before I move to 24? Cool. Okay, cool. Really, I've broken 24 up into two main categories. So investment attraction, this is what I'm talking about, the boots on the ground. So now that we have the data, how are we going to go out there and leverage it? The first is those packages I touched on that we've started. So we will have those created for all sorts of different opportunities. So we do have greenfield in Beaumont. We do have infill. We have potential for light industrial. Commercial is a big one. So those are all going to be created and used as we go. We are looking at an examination of the incentives or disincentives that could be used to help us fill some areas. We get asked time to time for incentives, but what we really want to do is, one, see what's being offered through the region, and two, fully understand what we should be incentivizing. All development doesn't need to be incentivized. What we want to incentivize is what are we having trouble attracting. So we're really going to be doing a lot of work on that. We plan to bring that back to council in the first part of the year here. The other thing we found in working with the businesses is Beaumont has a very large percentage of our businesses being home-based. Really, that does hurt us when it comes to our commercial tax base. And what we want to start understanding as we work with these businesses are what are the barriers. We know that there are the basic ones out there, like the rent is too high, it's easy to do it from home, I can watch my kids, but there's also opportunities for some of these businesses as they grow. And our local business group will be working to let them know if there are grants available, if there are opportunities to share space. We do have a couple of collectives in the city and they do quite well. So any opportunities we can have to help those who are interested in growing, we're going to be exploring those this year. So the next is the working with the local developers to reduce the vacancy. You'll hear a little bit more about our vacancy in the upcoming report, but it was surprising to all of us. We have a large amount of second floor commercial vacancy, and some areas of the city that see more vacancy than others. So what we will be doing is working with the developers who are not actively seeking to fill their vacancy, as well as those who are. What we really need to see is that number brought down because it is a hindrance to new development in the city. Sorry, I'm not looking here, but I lose my microphone. Beyond that, we're going to continue to work with the regional partnerships. We're going to continue responding to those foreign direct investment opportunities, and we're going to continue chasing down anything that could be something that brings Beaumont a better opportunity. We'll report back on numbers in that as best we can through the year. I believe I sent to council before Christmas. There is a large amount of information coming at you this year, and that's because we have that base now. So we'll keep you as updated as we can. The final 2 points here are just some of those big wins we've had, and some of these things we're going to be leveraging while we're out there. So the health needs assessment will be done in the first quarter of this year. That is going to be immensely helpful when we're working with developers, trying to get them to build out office space. An office space has a large amount of expenses when compared to, say, a commercial retail or anything compared if you're looking at the medical. So if we can show them that there is the need for this medical, we can bring people to the table. We might be able to pair up and fill some of those gaps. So we're very excited about that opportunity. And of course, with the broadband now being available, that's going to open up more opportunity for us as well. For our local business growth and retention, we're going to continue to work on the business licensing and sponsorship programs. They're sort of our day-to-day. Promotion of local business as best we can. We are looking to do some networking events as well as bring them all the opportunities we find. So last year we had opportunity to bring export classes and resources to our local businesses. And for a couple of them, that was actually a really good thing to help them grow their business. So we're going to keep looking for opportunities like that. We're going to explore signage solutions with the Chamber of Commerce. They've brought a council presentation in the fall, and we're going to continue to work with them on that. And we're also going to develop a full local business retention and growth plan. So once we've seen which of these tools are well received by the business community, we're going to solidify a plan going forward for a few years and let them know what opportunities we will have coming for them. Now I'm going to hand it over to Devin for the commercial market analysis. Thank you. Right.
Yeah. Cool. Hi, my name's Devin Tuttle. I've met some of you before. Yeah, so we, over the last 6 months, our team has put together this commercial market analysis. I'm really excited to finally have the chance to, present it and show it off today. So between July and September 2023, the economic development team studied Beaumont's commercial real estate market to understand where gaps exist in the level of goods and services available to residents. Over this period, we studied Beaumont's market context to understand our area of trade, created a database of commercial supply, and launched a consumer survey to obtain Beaumont-specific spending data and retail wants. Finally, we were able to produce a gap analysis that illustrates where leakage occurs in our city. And I believe this research is vital to delivering sustainable development to our residents because it produced data, again, that is specific to Beaumont, that would be unavailable from any other source. Moving forward, this research establishes a baseline for determining the potential opportunities for retailers, sorry, this is awkward, and which types of shops could be supported in the city. So just giving a little bit of primer, and I know you've heard a lot of these stats before, but just a little bit of an update to 2026 or to 2023 with Beaumont specific data. So since 2021 or since 2001, we've had a 9.4% annual average growth rate. This puts us at the third fastest growth rate in Western Canada. Every single day, we see a traffic flow of 16,000 vehicles per day pass through the city. And 12% of our workforce is employed locally within the community. Just looking at traffic flow a little bit more, strategically located near large employment hubs, critical transportation infrastructure, and distribution networks, Beaumont has a strong regional access to support a variety of economic potential. Every day, 16,000 vehicles flow north to settle on 50th Street due to the regional context, we can largely attribute this to commuter traffic flow. Most days, 13,600 of our city residents leave to work, of which 1,600 stay within Beaumont. This is important to keep in mind because as our residents leave to work every day and drive out of the city, they're pulled into other markets for goods and services, which means that it's often more convenient for them to stop on the way home or on the way to work for these goods and services that they wouldn't be able to purchase in Beaumont otherwise. I think a lot of the conventional wisdom is that Beaumont's regional trade area is largely limited by its geography and to a lesser extent its size in our capacity to bring in trade from immediately beyond our city. And so neighboring two larger municipalities in Edmonton South and Leduc, it often means that residents are pulled into these surrounding areas to do most of their comparison shopping, which creates a retail leakage, rather than attracting residents from neighboring communities into Beaumont, a retail inflow. While this has traditionally been the case, it's not the case for all retail categories. And as we grow, I do expect this area of trade to change. The reason for this is how we're developing in comparison to our neighbors. Our city's grown exponentially faster than Edmonton, Leduc, and the greater municipal county. Over the last decade, we've grown at almost 10% a year, whereas Leduc, Edmonton, and the greater Edmonton region is growing between 1% and 6% every year. As Beaumont expands, both in geographical terms and population, we expect there's a high potential for capturing additional retail spending. So if we look north along 50th Street towards Edmonton, the communities south of the Henday are naturally going to expand southwards towards the city limit in Beaumont. Starting with Larev, we'll expand north. And this is important as the types of development that we choose will create a choice for consumers in the area to select South Edmonton or Beaumont for their daily destination shops and services. Right now, going to Beaumont feels as if you're leaving the city, but there is going to come a time where it feels like a seamless transition to Edmonton, making it more convenient to shop in Beaumont versus Edmonton while maintaining the important identity of our quaint city. In the next decade, we conservatively estimate that Beaumont will have a population of at least 28,000, and the communities to the southeast area of the Hendays will provide an additional market of 50,000 consumers, putting a total trade area at almost 80,000 consumers. So it's important that we build a Beaumont for the future that's sustainable, but also aspirational in nature. Looking at our trade area strengths, what makes Beaumont a desirable market for new retailers? When compared to the Edmonton average, Beaumont's trade area tends to be similar in age, but with a higher proportion of children. Beaumont's median age is 36.8, where 22% of our population is below the age of 15, compared to Edmonton's, which is about 18%. We have a much higher income, with our household median income close to $150,000 a year, compared to $121,000 in Edmonton. Residents are much more likely to be homeowners than a renter, and are much more likely to work in trades, transportation, natural resources, or agricultural sectors. And the types of employees and workforce that we have in the city is important because they have a high spending profile, and they also have a bright outlook in the Alberta economy. Having residents with high spending profiles really helps us attract new business and economic opportunities moving forward. So if we look to our actual trade area spending, and this is where we start to get into the Beaumont specific data here, is we have a retail market that's currently valued at approximately $663 million. If you look at that whole area that we're hoping to tap into, that number grows to $1.8 billion. So this chart shows a breakdown of retail categories. There's 19 in there, and it's how different residents would spend their money in 2023 within Beaumont, outside of Beaumont, on the internet. And so the most significant spending categories on the retail side are grocery and specialty foods, automotive, RV, motorsports dealerships, personal services, things such as hair, nail salons, clothing, apparel, and footwear, and fifth is home furnishing and accessories. While Beaumont's geography does create some limitations for market inflow, it is nevertheless a market that is very willing to spend. Of that $663 million we spend annually, we have three significant categories we do not have an adequate supply of and therefore cannot capture a reasonable share of the market. First, automobiles and motorsports. Realistically, when you look at the amount of time people are going to travel and our population base, it's not realistic to expect Beaumont to attract an auto dealership. Second, it would be fair to say that we're underserviced in the clothing category. I mean, you can't get underwear, you can't get socks, and this is something that we're immediately going to seek to attract. Third, home furnishings is another interesting item. Proximity to nearby retailers in Edmonton provide a close option for residents, but that shouldn't limit our growth mindset given the lack of local selection. Moving on to the supply side, when we look at our commercial real estate and looking at business attractions, you have two options: infill or new investment and development. One area that we found is really unique to Beaumont is a much higher than average percentage of vacant commercial property. A large amount of the property does happen to be that second floor traditional office space. However, recent trends since 2020 have shown a reduced demand in office space, not only in Beaumont, but across the country. So while we've had developers experience some difficulty in filling these spaces, this is something we're working on and trying our best to solve. But the reality is it paints a picture of high vacancy in our community. 21.2% of all commercial real estate is vacant, making it extremely difficult to attract new businesses to Beaumont. And so if we get a little bit more granular on the supply side when looking at vacancy, we've noticed that a disproportionate amount of this vacancy tends to reside in the south end of the city. Although we don't have an immediate remedy to the situation, we do believe that as the community continues to build out, and with the development of Innovation Park, we can find a way to help drive more traffic to the south end, which would then therefore increase the demand for these spaces. At the moment, though, we seem to have more development from new retailers on the north end of the city. Moving into our consumer survey, when we looked at other municipal development reports from the region and previous work completed within our own community, the noticeable downside was that a lot of the information used to create it was generic to this Edmonton region. So traditionally, when we hired consultants or external firms, they would use data from the Edmonton region and apply a series of assumptions to create data relevant to Beaumont. This really isn't good enough for me. Really wasn't good enough for our community. And so when we're unable to find Beaumont specific information, we created and launched a consumer survey to collect data that we could not have gotten anywhere else. To understand the different types of retail opportunities residents would like to see and how they would spend their money across different merchandise categories, we used two different approaches to surveying. Initially, we interviewed consumers as they left various retailer locations, running them with a tablet to complete a brief survey. And then we expanded this data collection operation. We employed different members of our staff and administration and you guys as well to promote this out through various online channels. And so in total, we were able to collect 407 valid responses. And this number is significant as we required at least 300 for our survey to be statistically valid with a reasonable margin of error. So as you can see, we're very happy to exceed our expectations, and I can say that we are confident this has statistical relevancy. I'll briefly share the most significant highlights from the survey, and if you're interested in reading more, you can view the entirety of the survey in the commercial market analysis. So first, overall, Beaumont captures 25% of our retail spend in the community, which means that for every dollar a resident spends, 75 cents leaves the city. 21% of our respondents indicated that they were currently satisfied with the level of restaurants or retailers in the city. Clothing and footwear was the most requested addition across both restaurants and shopping propositions. There's a high demand from the consumer to be able to purchase clothing and shoes in their community for all ages, all gender groups. Respondents would like to see new restaurants that place an emphasis towards family dining with options that are both healthy and affordable. And 6 of the 19 different retail categories have a greater than 90% spend ratio outside of the city. So the results from the consumer survey, the most requested retailers were clothing stores, something like a Marks Worth Warehouse, a department store. Canadian Tire was singled out quite heavily, apart from other home improvement stores like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, and finally a Walmart. On the restaurant side of things, family restaurants that were affordable came up. We routinely heard options for a breakfast spot, something with a 24-hour appeal to it. And then mid-level chains, something like Earl's, Joey's, Moxie's, and then fast food that kind of broke away from that traditional burgers and fries. So whether that be a healthy option, a freshie, a pita pit, something like that. Next, we were also interested in knowing what categories are highly valued by residents that currently have low spending within the city. And this is important because this is areas of significant growth and opportunity that we can focus on immediately to improve the quality of life. Looking at the screen to the top left quadrant, there's 4 categories that are clothing and footwear, entertainment, home improvement, and full service restaurants. It's also interesting to note in the top right quadrant of high spending and high importance that residents highly value having access to a greater variety of grocery stores and supermarket options. So to provide an example of this, of the demand gap, let's look at grocery stores and supermarkets in our community. Beaumont's residents spent $131 million on groceries in 2023. Of that, only $68 million or 52% was spent within the city. Within Beaumont, we have 2 grocery stores that roughly account for 81,000 square feet of floor space. Or in other words, we expect a grocery store to require about 40,000 square feet of floor space. If we were to try and capture 100% of sales in the grocery category, it would require at least 124,000 square feet of floor space or 1 additional store. If we look back to what residents value, it's clear that there's a high demand for additional grocery stores. And we know we have about 75,000 square feet of infill vacancy. So why can't we just fill this demand with infill vacancy? Well, in the case of grocery stores and many other retailers, specific retailers need specific sites and developments for their business. While we have almost 75,000 square feet of infill, it's unreasonable to think we could just decentralize grocery stores into second floor office buildings or retrofit existing structures to include other requisites like a drive-through. So in sum, we undertook a gap analysis where residents, to establish where residents' demand for retail goods is higher than the availability of retailers currently offered in our city. In completing the analysis, we found that $663 million was spent on retail merchandise by Beaumont residents in 2023. And of that, approximately $163 million stays within the community. Our goal moving forward is to help improve that ratio. First, I want to talk about the rapid pace of population growth that's outstripped the capacity of development over the last few years. The growth has brought in new consumers that are young, educated, and highly selective in their consumption preferences. As the city grows and changes, so too will its identity. Beaumont's in a great opportunity to bring in the correct types of retailers and commercial opportunities now to create a vibrant city that can maintain strong growth rates and retain that high level of socioeconomic well-being that keeps families in our community. When we spoke with residents in September and October, what was most frequently pointed out to us was proximity to home, and the opportunity for local shopping is the main attraction to shopping in Beaumont. On the other hand, the limited selection of goods and services pose the most significant barriers to shopping locally. While Beaumont has successfully attracted new retailers and residents, a real gap in offerings still exists. As of July 2023, Beaumont features an estimated commercial inventory of almost 600,000 square feet with a vacancy rate of 21.2%. Now, I will qualify this by saying that majority of our vacancy does stem from that second floor office unit. And if we remove second floor buildings, that vacancy rate drops to about 15%. Still a very significant number when we look at comparative jurisdictions. For example, Edmonton Southeast Summerside community has a total vacancy rate of 8.4%. And if we look at Leduc in its entirety, they have a vacancy rate of 3.1%. From my perspective, this vacancy can be largely attributed to two main factors: a mismatch between the available infill real estate and the specific needs of retailers, larger box stores, franchises requiring drive-throughs, et cetera, and the marginal cost to transition a home-based business to a commercial storefront. Furthermore, as Beaumont grows, and so does the communities in Edmonton Southeast, there's a greater potential to capture more of the surrounding market and increase the city's trade area to attract higher rates of inflows. There are an additional 43,000 consumers in Beaumont's potential trade area, and this is expected to increase to 50,000 by 2033. If developed strategically with the correct mix of retail opportunities, Beaumont could present a trade-off for each one of those consumers to select the larger drive across major infrastructure to visit Edmonton shopping destinations or simply just shop in Beaumont. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. We've all been anxiously awaiting this one. I know it's something we hear about often in the communities. So, and I know that there was a lot of work that went into this, especially with the data collection and analysis, as well as a lot more in-person visits with our businesses, as you mentioned, around the community. So a big thank you to your team as well. I know that that was noticed. I feel that we're definitely in a big transition period economically. And I think that Beaumont's in a great position to be able to improve our ECDEV and to really capitalize on that. So I definitely understand the breakfast piece. I was looking to do breakfast meetings and like it's difficult before 10 to find anything. So I'm sure we have quite a few questions from my colleagues here. So I will let them go first. To begin, we'll go with Councillor Penrod, then Councillor Van Newkirk and Natona Boss.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tuttle and Ms. Nicing for your fantastic work on this. I wish I could have seen this sooner. And I noticed you began last year with quarterly reports and that fell off. So we didn't hear from you in Q3 and Q4. So just wanted to ask what that was about and if there's anything that we can or need to do differently to make sure that we're hearing from you. I think I'm not too far out on a limb when I say that we're eager to hear from you on these fronts. I'm super excited to see the work that you've been doing, but it's a lot of the work that you do is kind of tucked away and out of sight of public eyes kind of thing. So we were just having this conversation last week, you know, we believe that you're doing great work, but we're just not sure exactly what. So I'll start there.
That's fair. Thank you for the question. So last year we had initially planned 3 updates to council. We had an election. So our one was to be in October, the week before new councillors were to come on, and that was to be this presentation. So we felt it was important that all of the new council understand the base we're building our economic foundation off of. So it got pushed and the agendas were quite full. So we were pushed to January, which we're fine with. It's good to have all this stuff out. And that's why you got kind of our annual update and this together. But yeah, we didn't want to present it the week before the election and then have to catch other people up on all the information. So we just thought it was good for the whole group to have the same information. Coming this year, though, we did send that and they are already being scheduled in for the year. So we expect to be here more often.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I mean, I'll just speak for myself, but I would want to be doing everything that I can to manage my schedule and the agendas of these meetings to make sure that this is one report that never gets bumped. Because I think it's
We did
just too
volunteer to
vital.
be bumped, to be fair.
Yeah. Fair enough. There's loads going on. We're growing so rapidly. So the other piece I just wanted to nose into a little bit, and then I'll pass it to my colleagues. Yes, I'm sure there's loads of questions to press into. So I was sort of edified to see that the common knowledge that we have loads of commercial vacancies bears out when we really dig into the actual data. Not surprised, but edified. I'm a little bit surprised though to hear your conclusion that we're fairly, I'm going to miss your exact quote, but that we're fairly competitive on the rents and lease rates. As I actually look at the numbers that you've reported in the report, there seems to me to be a significant difference compared to the region. So just wanted to give you the opportunity to speak more to that issue.
So I did some comparative analysis looking at real estate using publicly available data, Realtor and other sites like that. When we look at Edmonton Southeast and when we look at Leduc, the rents are actually within that comparable range. Within $1 to $3 off per square foot. So they are in a competitive place. What does where a lot of our vacancies are in that Class A retail. And so when you look at a place like Leduc, they have a lot of Class C, Class B, Class A commercial real estate. So real estate that wasn't built in the last 10 years that is super modern, which does drive down that overall rent cost.
Just to bump in for a second,
Yes.
this is new to me, and I'm sure there's others out there that don't know the definition of Class A, B, and C.
Sorry.
So if you could
Yes.
just give us a definition.
Class A real estate would be the most modern, most new, built within the last 5 to 10 years kind of thing. Class B would be that kind of mid-tier where they still have some modern amenities, but it isn't that brand new real estate. And then that Class C would be older builds constructed in 1990 and previous.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Councillor Penrod, I do have more specific data on real estate. I just don't want to, misspeak and have an issue with any numbers. But if you are interested, I can provide that.
Yep, sounds like opportunity for a longer conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that all your
Thanks,
questions,
Deputy
Fran?
Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's not all, but I'll make room for the rest.
For now. Okay, thank you, Councillor Van Newkirk, and then Tellenboss and McCossway.
We've probably all come loaded with lots, so I'm going to keep on that same theme around the vacancies. So what I enjoyed in this presentation is some of the quantification of the vacancies, specifically around 53. I did hear some conversation or some words from you guys on the presentation about willingness to fill the vacancies. So I just want to explore that a bit. So in this process, has economic development been able to speak with the actual property owners of these vacant properties? Like, did you guys get right to the owners of these properties?
In some cases, Councillor. So we do have a number of them who are owned by groups and companies, but there's always at least someone managing the property. So we have had a few opportunities we've been able to send out to businesses, as well as looking for office space ourselves. So I have a firsthand knowledge of being a person looking to rent and how difficult it is to sometimes get a response. So that's something that we really want to explore this year. What we want to do is put something together and show some of these developers the cost of keeping that vacant to themselves, to the community, and just help to see if we can encourage to fill it. We're also looking to find those unique opportunities that fill some of these more difficult to fill spaces. So we've had some contact with the developers and the owners, but we do hope to really increase that as time goes forward here.
Yeah, and so there's been different comments throughout the presentation, but just succinctly, why are they vacant? What are you hearing? What is the reason that these properties are sitting vacant? What are the barriers that they've identified?
From what we are hearing, it's they've just not found the right fit. Beyond that, that's probably not a conversation for now.
Yeah. Are they motivated to fill the vacancies? Are you hearing motivated
In some cases.
owners,
In some cases,
but not all?
not all, no.
Okay, so that's the root of one of the problems, I think, is you know, just to be very clear, there's a lack of motivation to fill spaces in Beaumont. So we'll tickle that out here. Now, anytime the conversation around vacant space comes up in Beaumont, you know, the number one narrative that is out there is price. And you guys have talked about that and you've alluded to it. And some of the numbers you just shared are actually not supportive of that narrative. But you know, what do we know about the individual negotiations between, you know, prospective business owners who are looking to transition their business from a home-based business to brick and mortar or not? So I just want to acknowledge in this, as part of this conversation, that we don't actually know how much room there is to move, how motivated people are, and the motivation goes both ways. What is the motivation from home-based business to transition to brick and mortar? What is the motivation for business owners to size up in Beaumont? What is the motivation for those who own property in Beaumont to strike deals to fill their space? Anyone who owns anything knows that there's break-even points, there's profitability points within all businesses, and property is business, right? So,
To your point, Counselor, I may be able to add a little. With Devin's explanation of the Class A, B, and C property, one thing we do have here in Beaumont is a lot of Class A. So some of our home-based businesses or smaller entrepreneurs may be looking to a 1978 building somewhere and saying, well, why is the rent so much more here? So it's important that we are comparing the apples to the apples, but can you find less expensive space elsewhere? Yes. Is it the same space? No. So I think that's one thing that leads to the impression that all of the rents in Beaumont are so high, but it just happens to be newer infrastructure.
yeah, and I think the concluding statement that I'll make on this piece before I move on to maybe another is that the narrative and perception, I believe, is a big barrier right now. I think there's a lot of folks that might not put time and effort into finding place in Beaumont because the social media narrative is that rents are too high in Beaumont. Why should I bother trying? I really wonder how many people have actually went and tried to make a deal, that have actually went and explored the options. And the other challenge I've actually heard is similar to the challenge that, you know, you've experienced yourself, not even being able to get a hold of people. Right. So if you can't even get a hold of people who own property that's vacant in Beaumont, it's quite a concern as well. So, you know, I just want to, you know, I'm kind of beating this up a little bit here. I'm happy with the work you guys are doing, very happy with that. But I just want to be very clear that there's a whole bunch that goes on in the business world that A, the city isn't part of, and B, the city is trying to navigate through at the same time as all the residents and prospective businesses. So I think that's very important. I'll move on to one topic, Chair, and then I'll yield the floor to someone else. I'll choose this one here. When you've been working through the conversations with those you've been able to get a hold of, has the ability for Beaumont to move permits through the permit process been a barrier to investment? Have you heard conversation about that?
A year ago, I heard it often. I hear it much less now.
Okay.
So I believe our planning department has made some great improvements that way, and we're not hearing it at our table anymore, which is probably a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah. In the data that was presented, I just want to note that in 2015, we had 756 permits. So that was quite a few years ago now. 2017 was 737, and then 2022 is 741, right? And so although 2022 is 741, we actually had 2 years, and I didn't realize that until I was looking at that chart. We've actually had 2 years with less staff that we had more volume, you know, and so at face value, that's what that table, that's what that graph, you know, tells us right there, right? So So I'll stop there and see what others have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to piggyback off that a little bit, I've said it before, and I know a lot of people can agree. ECDev and community and social services and planning and development and stuff all need to kind of work interchangeably and not in silos. If we bring in retail investment, but people aren't paid enough and there's no housing to support them, that kind of doesn't matter. So we definitely need to make sure that we're all kind of working together as we push some of this forward as well. So thank you. Councillor Natalenbos is up, and then Munkoff Swain, and then Councillor Barnhart.
Perfect. Yeah, first of all, thank you for the report. Obviously, a lot of critical information there. Couple of questions. I believe Councillor Penrod walked into that one asking about all these additional reports, and then you had the opportunity to blame the new guys. So I apologize, but rightfully so and completely understandable. Just a couple of questions in regards to Councillor Van Nieuwerkerk kind of touched on it, but it's a bit concerning, the comment that was made that there are developers that are not actively looking to fill vacancies. And I believe I'm quoting that correctly. With 75,000 square feet of vacancy, what seems to be the reason that someone would not actively want to fill their space?
I think I can touch on this a little bit, and it ties back to what Councillor Van Nieuwkerk was saying. So as we look at reducing the vacancy in Beaumont, what we're going to be doing is really exploring that. So we're going to go with all of the developers with vacancy, all of the landowners with vacancy, with hard numbers, saying here's what we see, here's the average rents. We want to get a really good idea of what are they looking for in a tenant. Is the space needing to be upgraded? And we want to come armed with all that information when we deal with the home-based businesses, when we deal with the new small entrepreneurs, when we deal with the people who could adequately fill those spaces. So right now, you're right, the city isn't involved in those conversations. We don't know all the details of why they are or not working towards it. But my hope is that we can put some resources towards helping them fill it, just like we do with the new developments being made. So we want to put a real emphasis on reducing that vacancy rate. So if we go to them with the information of here's everything we know, can you tell us what you're looking for, what needs to be done, how far off, what are your barriers? Then what we can do is we can try to find the solutions to bring them together. And that's a big part of the work we'll be doing in 2024. So we don't have all those answers just yet, but we do plan to come back to council once we have a better idea.
Perfect. Thank you. I guess the other question is, and it kind of surrounds that, obviously there are some new developments within Beaumont, and then we happily invite everyone to develop here. That's what we want. But it kind of ties to the concern. Obviously, some of these developments are coming with tenants or clients. When we have an existing amount of vacancy, why do you think that these individuals wouldn't occupy an existing facility versus a brand new facility or coming with a developer?
Most often it's the opportunity to build to need. So when we have developers build large properties, they'll have 2 or 3 tenants that are secured. Those will be their anchor tenants, and they'll do the build to suit what those anchor tenants are looking for. The other CRU spaces, they'll look to infill, and that supplements the income for the rest of the property. But typically what you'll see is either there's the appeal that it's a brand new property. Location is always a big point. And then just the fact that if it is new, you can have it built to suit. You can have it just a little bit more to what you were looking for. Devin touched on it a little bit in his presentation, but particularly with franchises, there's very specific needs. So oftentimes there's a little bit less barrier to meeting those needs in a new build if you're in on the ground floor, so to say. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the answers. One last question. I have about 100 more, but I'll keep it to one last one here. In terms of all the research and the data that's been collected, obviously you present it to us and the community, whoever's watching this. What are we doing to present it to potentially future tenants or developers? Obviously Beaumont has a lot of, we'll call them needs, maybe wants, some of them, but how are we sharing that with the public beyond Beaumont?
As much as I would love to believe everyone would read our 100-page report, that's not likely. So what we are doing is those industry-specific packages. They work out to about 5 or 6 pages.
Yeah, so
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're building industry-specific patches right now. One targeting greenfield development. I think it's about 4 or 5 pages, looking at light industrial. So we have some target sectors in mind that we're going to start approaching. That one's a little larger at about, say, 10 pages. And then a commercial guide looking to target infill development. That's about 6 pages. And those will be, finished hopefully in the next 3-6 months, kind of thing like that.
So what they do is they pull the key data from this information that are relevant to those topics and present it in a better digestible format with lots of pictures and graphs. And it just makes it quick for those people looking at that to analyze if Beaumont's the place for them.
Perfect. And I lied, I have one last question. Throughout my entire campaign, I heard this word quite a bit, engagement. What does it mean to you guys? Like, who are we engaging with? Obviously the businesses, but is it owners? Is it the managers? And what specifically are we trying to get out of it?
All of them, really whoever's there. So most of our business visits are pop-ins, and then they're followed up with whoever we should be meeting with. Really what we're trying to understand there is, how is it going for our local businesses? What do they need from us? Is there room for them to grow? Retention is a big thing in a community this size. So we really want to make sure that the businesses who have made the investment in Beaumont, 1, feel supported, and 2, are given all the opportunities we can find, much like we would a new venture. So that's a big piece for our local engagement. Another big piece of engagement is the developers. So we really want to understand, what are they trying to build and how can we help them fill that? Because we do have that goal of increasing the commercial tax base. So really it's kind of on 2 levels. So you have your, let's help people grow, let's make sure we're retaining them here. And then we also have, if you're looking to build and expand in Beaumont, how can we help make that happen?
Perfect. Thank you. I look forward to seeing those pamphlets you guys are putting together.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, I highly encourage, if Councillor Tellenboss and Penrod have an opportunity to do a business walk in the new year, to do so. It's great to get out there and to be able to connect with our local businesses as well. Councillor Mungoff-Swain, then Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the great report. I think in my evolution through this process, I've seen a lot of kind of packages, and that typically quote the easy things to pull off, right? Like our median income and vacancy. I think the #1 barrier for us is being data, and to have someone like yourself on air who geeks out at it is great, because that's gonna make the difference. You know, a lot of the industry or the players that we're trying to attract, they don't know Beaumont, right? And so you can't just be like, hey, look how fast we're growing. Like you've got to have that data. So that's super helpful for me. Obviously there are some key things that would need to happen in 24, Innovation Park being the #1. Like you talk about the challenges on the south side there. You know, if that gets announced and people can see the influx of people who are going to be, you know, commuting to that space and potentially even staying in that space, that's where you're going to be able to use that data. I'll quickly touch on, I don't want to be too negative here, but there's a conversation around the lack of motivation to fill space. You talked about, you know, some methods to entice folks, but you also looked at the flip side as well. And I won't put you on the spot here, but there's been a conversation around a vacancy tax, and does that help? Does that hurt? You said you're thinking about that. Like, how does that? What I'm hearing a lot from you know the residences anyway, residents I should say, is you know we keep talking about this, right? So where's some action around it? And I'm not saying that's the solution, but you know, for us just to keep saying, oh, we're building packages and we're going out like that, it's kind of tough to understand. So have you thought through that vacancy tax, or like is this something to disincentivize folks to just sit on these things? Like, how do you think about that?
I have some experience with it from a previous role. They can be incredibly effective, but I do believe we first have to try that carrot. So we will be bringing back options for both incentives and disincentives to council. But in my mind, if a property is vacant and someone's been trying to fill it, I would rather help them try to fill it. So I think once we have the opportunity to meet with the owners and the developers for these vacant properties, and we see if they are motivated, if it was just a mismatch, if we can help with it, then I see there being a strong case to do a disincentive. If we've sent you 10 property potentials and we hear back that you won't return calls, or do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
I don't want to penalize people for the office place market going soft. Nobody saw that coming. A lot of these places were built pre-pandemic. So it's really a matter now is how can we creatively help them fill those spaces? I do hope that there's some healthcare options that will really hone in on some of those. And I'm very excited to see the results from that we can start pressuring those type of development in. But we will be looking at disincentives as an option because you do have cases, and I'm not saying this happens in Beaumont,
Sure.
but you do have people who try to hold loss leaders.
Mhm.
And that hurts the community that those loss leaders are in. So what I want to do is understand if that's happening in Beaumont. And if that is, then how can we address it? And that would be one of those mechanisms we would look at to address it.
For sure. And you know, that whole concept around disincentivizing you might be looking at the existing space here, but
Mhm.
it's also going to disincentivize folks to come here generally, right? And so that I get there is a balance around that. I think, you know, somehow weaving this narrative, not just to locally here, but into our business community and what you guys are sharing here. And I think the mayor has an important role here to talk through that. I know you do lots of updates and town halls and all that sort of stuff coming up. I think really prudent to start talking about this sort of stuff so that people can see what we're trying to achieve here. So yeah, I think that the last comment for me is, you know, data is fantastic, but it's only as good as it is relevant, right? And so we've got this window here where we've got a strong economic development team that's got the data, and we've got to hone in on it. And so, just I guess my question is more from a resource perspective.
Mhm.
Like moving forward, like I see we've got this window here where we've, you know, that this data, you're not going to do this again for another 5-10 years probably. You might update it, but you're not going to do like a full every 4 years. So is there a chance for us is there support needed from council to get those resources in? Because, you know, everyone talks about, you know, the non-residential tax, you know, that ratio. So if there's a chance, now that we've got the data, we've got hopefully this innovation part coming, here's the time to leverage it. So,
Mhm.
you know, I feel as though I'm standing in front of you asking like, hey, do you need more resources? Of course, the answer is yes, right? And Mike and the finance team will have a different answer. But I guess from my perspective, I would much rather give you support over the next couple of years to try to take advantage of the spot we're in. And so I just leave that open here to see, have you thought through that, staffing challenges, all that sort of stuff?
Thank you. I always love the offer of resources. That is great. We actually have a well-resourced team though. So what we did, taking the phased approach that I kind of promised to when we started, was we put all of our resources on building that base and building that foundation. My goal this year is 3/4 of the team is working on investment attraction. Our local businesses are very important and we have a well-established base there. We're going to continue that work, but the rest of us will be out using this relevant data. If and when Innovation Park launches, that becomes the focus. And we just see what we can do out there. So a lot of it, as you know, with ECDEV is you try 400 things,
Sure.
you get one come in. But I do believe with the resources we have in place, we have what we need to really push that out there. Now, should the development start coming in very quickly, that might be a conversation of resourcing, but it could be on the planning side. It could be in other areas to help support that, because as the infrastructure grows out, as you know, that causes more, but that's a wonderful problem to have. So I'm hoping we get there.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just close by saying, I know you've done a lot of work on the Indigenous side of things as well, reaching out to our partners. So I appreciate that. And we're probably not quite there yet, but as these things build out, I know you've got those good relationships across Treaty 6 here. And we've talked before about the amount of Indigenous capital that's out there, and would love for it to be here. So yeah, thanks for all the work on that, and keep up the good work. So, and thanks for all the work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, just a reminder for everyone, the active department, Jennifer and her team will be coming back with a plan kind of based on some of this data, correct? So then we'll be able to dig into more of that at that point as well. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you very much, Chair. Really appreciate the information. And as I'm sitting here trying to craft some specific questions, I realize that what I'm going through in my own mind is an analysis of the data, you know, right off the top here kind of thing. And I think that's important for us to do. but I really understand that the staff have had this data for much longer, and you've got a much better understanding of kind of the breadth and the scope of it all. So I really do appreciate that. And as a city, I think we've gone and grown and done everything that we're trying to do here in such a great way that we've made huge strides. Nowhere near finished. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but we definitely are a long way from where I remember us being, and that's not that long. A couple of questions though, and one is about engaging the local businesses, because I do know that well, I deal with a lot of the local businesses in some of my other work, and I don't know that they feel that the city supports them as much as we do. And I just wonder, what can we do? I know councillor, mayor, we do everything we can, but we can't reach everyone. Do you have anything specific in mind that you might be considering to give them a better sense? And when I say local businesses, I also mean home-based businesses. I do have a soft spot in my heart for them, even though I know there are problems associated with some. There's a lot of benefits to having a large number of home-based businesses in our community. It provides a lot of employment and income. Opportunities for growth are there for sure. So just give you an opportunity, if you have anything specific about what you will be doing as a city to reach out to the local businesses to show that we actually are not only supporting new development, but also the existing businesses that are here.
Thank you for the question. It's an excellent question. To date, we have full active files on 118 of our commercial location businesses. That's been done this year. We're very proud of that number because they're not one visit. There is a lot of follow-up work. We provide what we can. We have had opportunities we've been able to push out to the local businesses, and the plan is to continue that. The one big new piece will be the networking piece in the new year, and that gives them the opportunity to come and do some learning opportunities, or connect them with different groups. And as we have those, as we have this business piece, what we look to do is find out what else are they looking for from their city. I mean, the number one thing we hear from every business, as you hear probably from every resident, is, well, can you get the taxes lower? Well, no, we can't.
Thank you for that.
It's not where we're at right now, other than by helping your business grow and new businesses come, correct? So what we're looking to do with that business retention and growth plan is, that's something that can be advertised out to the business community. Here's everything we offer to you. Here's what you've asked us for. Here's what we're doing towards it. And that may help with that messaging of what is the city here to help you do.
Excellent. And one last question, if I may, Chair. You mentioned that there, and I think this was, if I got your name correctly, Devin. Is that your name, Devin? Yes, you told us that there was a gap between what people are buying here and what they're buying in Edmonton and Leduc. I was just wondering, is there any way that we can measure, or have you measured, how much people are buying online? I mean, is there now just a shift away from buying underwear and socks in a store to buying it online?
Yes, we didn't ask the question to subdivide it between inside, outside, and online. When we were quantifying the data, we just left it between inside Beaumont and outside. And so outside would have categorized outside and online shopping. From looking at other municipalities that have done similar work to this, where they've done consumer surveys, they're seeing ranges of about 18 to 25% of online shopping. Obviously, that doesn't have apples to apple relevancy to Beaumont. And so moving forward, when we do this survey again in 4 years, we will look to add an online shopping component to that.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, and then the Mayor.
Yeah, a couple of things. So carrying on from where Councillor Barnhart was, one of the things that I haven't heard referenced tonight is the role of the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce. Can you maybe speak to that? Where do they fit in? How have they helped? How can they help more? How do we interact with them? When do we interact with them? What is the relationship like? If you could just comment through a bunch of Beaumont of Chamber of Commerce connection to these efforts, that would be great. Thank you.
Perfect. We actually work with two chambers of commerce. So we work with the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce as well as the Leduc County. Our member businesses in the community are members of one or the other. So we do our best to work with both of them. We do meet more often with the Beaumont Chamber. We are working with the Beaumont Chamber on a signage solution as they presented to council. We do our grand openings and celebrations and ribbon cuttings in conjunction with the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce. So we do have more with them. We do have a liaison position on their board. So we meet with them often for that. And that's kind of where it's sitting at the moment. So our chamber in Beaumont is one person, one part-time person. So they're limited as to what else they can do. So we've really expanded quite a bit of what we're doing with them, but they are at a capacity point right now. With the Leduc Chamber, we do a little bit more advertising out to all the businesses. They have a little bit more capacity for the larger lunch and learns and things to that point. We also worked with both chambers on a job fair in the fall. So we do as much as we can with our local chambers. We include them as much as we can. They do business visits, but they're typically membership drives. So they're a little bit different than the business visits we do. So we don't work together on that, but pretty much everywhere else where we can, we work with them.
Yeah, thank you. Shifting gears on the data side, did you encounter data around lodging and hotels? What did that look like? I can't recall if I've overlooked it in the presentation here or not. Did you discover any gaps in that in the region?
Could you be more specific to your question? We just don't have hoteling in the community, so we didn't.
That's what I
have it.
mean. Yeah, the desire for it. So in all the conversations we had, did hotels come up? Are people asking for them?
Sorry, no, we didn't include housing and accommodation in our data set.
Did anyone ask for it? Like, did it come up in the consumer, customer surveys,
in the
residential
No,
responses?
in the responses we saw, we didn't have, there was one, two, I think, that indicated, and it was the case of, from a personal anecdote of, we come here to visit my daughter and we can't stay at their house because we're at capacity over the holidays. So we have to stay in, Edmonton area or the airport kind of thing. But not beyond one or two.
Where we do hear that is in our work with the local businesses. So it is something that a lot of our residents and local businesses see as being a large benefit. We do have developers who do look at this from time to time. We have a bit of a proximity issue, but as Beaumont continues to grow, there's more and more of a case to have a hotel in Beaumont. It's just not something that was specifically driven in this data set, but we would have a large amount through those interactions with people of anecdotal data that supports the idea of having a hotel locally.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity here to engage with the sports groups. And I think you can quantify the number of tournaments that are coming in, the size of the tournaments, where the draw is from, where those people are coming from, so that we understand who is coming to Beaumont. Are people coming to tournaments in Beaumont from Hay Lakes, or are they coming from Grand Prairie, right? So I do think there is probably some boots on the ground, more simple work that can be done to start to quantify some of that, because the need and desire is there. And the place that I most hear about the lack of lodging in the community is actually from the sports community. And yeah, because it's bringing and attracting a lot of people to Beaumont who, if you're not staying in Beaumont at night, you probably don't eat supper here either, right? And, and so I think there's some real missed opportunity there, that an entrepreneur somewhere is going to see and capitalize on. Last simple question. Right at the beginning in the 2023 annual review, you referred to a home promotional brochure. Is that one that's complete or one that's underway?
That's the one that's complete. So that was a generic, here's the great things about Beaumont, something that we could just use until we got all of our data put together.
Yeah.
So there are some copies, I believe, in the office in the back.
Okay, and is it digitally online too, or?
I believe it is on the website, and we had promoted it out through the social media channels as well.
Okay.
It is our generic one. We are much prouder of the ones we are doing now, but it served its purpose for a time.
Gotcha. Thank you, Chair. That exhausts my list.
Thank you. And the mayor.
Chair, appreciate your presentation. Most of my questions were already answered. I just have more of a comment thing. Great report, lots of good data, and we've used the data going forward, which is great. But one thing I gleaned from your presentation was that your willingness to go out there and talk to landlords who may need some help trying to find tenants. those who are willing and those who are unwilling at the same time. We haven't a chance to do that before. So I think our investment, economic development in personnel will pay dividends by you being able to go out there and actually be proactive and show the landlords and business community that we are there to help them, not work against them. That's a key message that I think you'll be able to convey to them. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll conclude my comments. Again, thanks for the presentation, and the information was very, very thorough. Thank you, Devin.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A lot of great questions here. Many of mine were answered around vacancy and local business and all that kind of stuff. So I will await the next presentation and some of the more specific plans pertaining to the data that we have here. Once again, thank you very much. That was very thorough. I did read through the entire one. It was long, but I read through it. So I appreciate all the work that goes into this, and I look forward to the next one.
I take no credit for that.
I had to learn how to edit my reports this year.
All right, we will be moving to the next part of our agenda, which is councillor inquiries. We had Councillor Penrod had an inquiry and it was posted for information. Are there any other inquiries? No, we're good. Okay. Moving on to the next part of the agenda is number 6, adjournment. We are done for this evening. Thank you so much. And Councillor Barnhart, we will see you in a minute.